participate more in poetry. It is very stimulating to me.
Yeah, good.
But I am also finding that being not being well exposed as I might have been in, or as well exposed as I might have been in the past with some of the classics, or that I am tending to be very well, it's not surprising. I'm being very sort of immature and sing-songy.
In terms of what?
In terms of thinking of poetry and trying to create verse.
Well, why
It's
not?
very
Yeah, but yeah, you're telling me two things. So at this very instant, I'm hearing from the defense witness and the jury, right? Like, so if you were to just say, "Hey, I'm thinking poetically, I'm writing poems," that's the end of it, and you enjoy it, or it's difficult, or whatever it is. The other part of it, the judgy part, like I'm just hearing from somebody else that has a different job at the very same time. So it's not like a clean delivery of your experience. Whereas if I had said, or you just wanted to talk about, hey, I have been pretty judgy about my poetry. Here's what it looks like, and here's how I'm managing it. That's quite common, of course, But I think that the horse is going to be happier without fences, and your poetry will be happier without.
That's really nice.
Yeah.
Very nice.
Yeah. So it can be hard to observe that in yourself, because the way you said what you said wasn't super out of the ordinary. It's like how a lot of people would say it, right?
Yeah,
But really kind of two roles speaking themselves at the same time,
Well, I guess that was in somewhat prelude. I absolutely hear the lesson there. Yeah. Horse is happier without fences.
Mm-hmm.
And just being, I mean, first of all, judgment is the thing to let go of, obviously one of the hardest, and
Mm-hmm.
judging yourself. And yeah, at the same time, the reason I was mentioning it is because I was wondering if you could recommend poetry, because I know, I mean, I can sort of read through poetry.org. Been there to, read some of your poetry or
Well,
some of these other places, but then I feel, I don't know. I guess I just like a recommendation.
mm-hmm. um, so I've been working on a document that has a lot of sort of recommendations.
Oh, nice.
And I was asking myself, I have it sort of in categories, the document. And I was asking myself, am I at the point where I break it up into 6 individual documents that, are a little bit narrowly focused, or because the document is just kind of called poet and poetry resources. So it's just, so a good way to do it is to think about any of the poems that we've come across in our gatherings. And if any of them speak to you, for whatever reason, the words, the subject, the rhythm, whatever, that's a good place to start. Like, find that poet and look for some more. And I would say if you read 6 or 7 of their poems and you like 3 of them, then it might be worth like looking at the library for a book that features them or something. And then maybe they talk about who their favorite poets are, or their inspiration. And maybe the tree, the branches expand. Because otherwise, it's kind of like going up to the seashore with a bucket and scooping and hoping to find your favorite.
Yeah.
True.
Good,
It's hard
good
to
point.
find fish, much less your favorite. But if you talk to the fisherman who says, "Oh, the kind you like, they're over here this time of year, and here's the color bucket you want." Okay, you got a better shot. So I think using, and I'm only saying for our group because we're regularly exposing ourselves to some poetry that's kind of random. and so just, oh, I like Carrie keeps reading from that poem. I really like, okay, go look into that. That's a nice way to pursue. I think that for, you know, for getting the biggest bang for your buck, listening to a couple words from Mary Oliver just randomly, like, gets me thinking poetically.
Ooh, okay. Interesting.
Even not the whole poem, just anything. You don't have to wild geese it, but just anything. Wendell Berry
Okay.
one,
Say it again, Wendell.
Wendell Berry. Um,
I'm sorry, Wendell Berry.
Berry like raspberry.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. But so one thing to think about is, what is it about poetry that would interest you enough to want to pursue more? Is it the subject? Is it the language? Is it the style? Is it the actual voice of the person? Meaning, like, you hear them recite it. Like, some people are going to be moved enough when it's on the page. Other people when it's recited. And figure out which is your avenue, and if it's being recited, go to YouTube and listen to some poets or something. Another one is, if you listen to On Being, the podcast or the NPR show.
Yes.
Krista with some regularity interviews poets, and that might be a nice way to get into a particular poet, where they'll read their work and you'll hear, and they'll get to talking about it. But again, maybe it's not the kind of poetry that's up your alley. So,
this is exactly the kind of recommendations I'm looking for, because I have made notes on some of the poets that we've read in this group. And one that Sarah read that I know Harry was really moved by too, or inspired by, was or whatever, was Saul Williams.
Yeah.
And that would probably be good to find on YouTube and listen. Because it was really great the way she read it. It was just, and it was amazing. But also some others. I've made notes as we've gone along. But I guess I've just felt a little intimidated by it. I guess also I just haven't fully engaged yet, but my intention is there and the moves are there toward it. And so maybe there's an excitement too about like what to do. I think listening, has really helped me. Well, I think listening and reading. It's like, that's why I have to hear it twice when you guys are reading something I'm so unfamiliar with. I think because what I'm relating to is the imagery and the storytelling. And so, and in such short verse, so much is said. And anyway, it's nice starting this poetry journey again with you guys. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, there's so many ways that you can find it, and sometimes I've been really excited about the poem, and therefore I'm falsely excited about the poet. And further review, I find, oh, it was just that poem. The rest of their stuff, I had hoped would really serve me, but it didn't quite meet me, and that's fine. But I think if you listen to a handful or a dozen of a poet's works, and a third of them kind of grab you a bit, then it's probably worth saying, okay, I want to look for more of that poet, or keep them in mind, or read about who, maybe even listen to an interview with them or something, and you're like, oh wow, I didn't think of that, or it's really it's really nice to discover poetry, but we don't really have the radio the way we have for discovering music for poetry.
Well, good point.
It often takes a little bit more of a young kind of searching for it.
I found also that excuse me, the like, generally I am not going backward and rereading things. Maybe a touch, but I'm generally trying to use opportunities and experiences as an invitation to create or to learn or to think myself.
Yeah.
But with poetry, what I found is, like, where I may have engaged it a bit, at least before, like I said, I lost the practice. I reverted to I'm saying childish. Again, it may not be such a negative to just allow it, but to preteen kind of thinking, uh, rhythmically and poetically, and even I don't know.
Here's something to think about. There's a factory, and a truck pulls up to the factory and delivers a bunch of minerals. And an hour later, a different truck comes up and delivers some different minerals. And 2 hours later, another truck delivers a small amount of yet another mineral. Then the next day, a truck delivers a bunch of oil. And then out of the factory comes paint. But from the factory comes paint, and that goes into somebody's studio, and out comes painting. Right? And probably into the studio comes a bunch of different paints from different factories. So when we think of poetry as the input, right, like you're exposing yourself to more poetry, I wouldn't presume that your output is going to be poetry.
Interesting.
It is probably going to be creative, but it may not look like. And it's nice to kind of exercise that muscle. Let's see if it can be poetry and what that poetry is. That's great. But I wouldn't, if you presume it, then you might kind of close yourself off from what creative expression wants to come from that poetic input.
Well, I think that's really nice and goes well with the idea of the horses, want to be roaming wild. I'm sorry, I have it right here. Horses are happier without fences.
Yeah.
Yeah. I understand what you're saying. And that is the time that I feel like I'm in that time where there's been this stew and I'm ready to, move into it, do something. So not with no outcome as a project, but just enjoy all of this more, So how about you? It seems like you're doing a lot of poetry work. Are you being able to write poetry at this time?
Oh yeah. Yeah. Writing every day. Yeah.
Which you have been doing for a long time, right?
Right. Oh yeah. It's kind of nonstop. Yep, for sure. So that's definitely been good. I stopped to write a little bit on my way here. So that felt nice.
Good. Now, I missed last week, so I don't know what the topic was. The topic last week that I did not attend for was archetypes.
Let's work on the topic for this week though. That's what we're trying to stick to. Did you get the topic? Did you get the newsletter with the topics?
No, I did not.
Okay. Well, the newsletter went out and I listed the topics for the next, I don't know, months or so worth.
Oh, okay.
So that people won't be surprised.
So funny. This time I looked on Patreon to see if this poetry was posted there. Oh, well. It seems like I'm in the wrong place. But okay. So newsletter has the topic. So what was it?
I posted a few in the classroom too. So
just so you know, actually, Steve, if you wouldn't mind, I did look in the classroom too. And what I see is new assignment, open mics, a comprehensive list. And then it has a list of addresses and everything. So I figured I wasn't looking at the right thing.
No, that's right. Yeah, that's what I was talking about. I started to put a document up where I could list the open mics for people. That's all.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Because I just didn't see the notes about what the topics were. And it's okay. I just wanted you to know I looked in classroom first.
I didn't make a note of the topics. I just opened a new assignment for each week. So I pre-opened a couple so you can see them. That's all.
Okay.
So the theme for this week is phases of life and their rituals.
Well, of course, I don't have anything off the top of my head. I'm sorry, I do want to be here to participate. I just haven't been able to this week and last. Phases of life, and I figured I could at least be a good listener.
Yeah. Well, there's room in every session. We can read some stuff that's not on topic too. We don't have to stick precisely to the topic.
Okay.
So one way that we might think of the phases of life is, we start as an infant, right? So essentially helpless. And then in infancy, we tend to explore ourselves and whatever we come into contact with. And in childhood, we tend to explore the world and others, right? Because we're ambulatory.
Yeah.
And, when we are in utero, we are two beings, but physically connected as one. And an infant, there's a shift. So now we have two individuals. But of course, one of them is super helpless. And so there's a high degree of dependency. And then we have childhood where we start to see a little bit of independence, clear separation of personalities and physicalities and so forth. And then we have a teenager who, of course, is even more determined to be understood as separate, right? And actively participating in their description of themselves, right? Like creating boundaries and expectations and patterns. They're trying on different personalities and fashion and haircuts and friend groups and whatever. So they're moving towards maturity and self
independence.
Independence is, yeah, thank you. That's a great, I was trying to say like self-supportive or something, but yeah, independence. And then when we get to adulthood, we have actual independence, as good as we get anyway. Obviously, your results may vary, but we have an independence. So we have like a radical difference between the fetus and the adult, right? Even though it's the same being, but these are different phases of the life. And this is just a way to describe the phases. You could describe them other way. And then ordinarily, after adulthood, the sort of pinnacle of separation, individuation, we have marriage, which is now I'm going to try and make one unit out of two, right? Which is like the reverse of that earlier process. And then we may have divorce, which is now an undoing of that. So it's a replay of the earlier pattern of what we do becoming one, although you have life experience and you have less room in the windshield. There's more view in the rear view mirror than in the windshield. And then we have death, which obviously could come before divorce. And, divorce doesn't have to follow marriage, but chances are we have death of one of the two members of the marriage. We could think of divorce as a type of death because that's a death of the marriage, just like physical death. But we all end up with death, right? And these are important phases of life that you can't really skip. Not everybody gets to all of them, but everybody gets to the last one. And it's important for us to reckon with those phases through ritual. And a wound is created where the ritual is not remembered or enacted.
Wow, that's interesting. Wound is created where ritual is not enacted.
Right.
Or around which.
It doesn't have to mean it's the world's biggest gala party for each of these, right? But, you know, there's a reason, you know, a quinceañera is more important than being 10 years old or being 17, right? Like nobody makes a big deal of a 17th birthday. They make a big deal of a 21st or an 18th, right? Or a 13th, right? And in the same way, you know, we make a big deal out of a funeral, we make a big deal out of a marriage, right? But we don't tend to make a big deal out of divorce, right? That doesn't mean we would celebrate it, but we don't societally or culturally have a ceremony for it. I mean, you do go to the courthouse and sign something, right? You know, but there isn't much in the way of a ceremony. So that mark being passed is missed, which, you know, aggravates the wound, because of course divorce is going to be a wound in most cases, right? And, you know, similarly, infancy, childhood, teenager, we want to kind of be able to mark these things. And so that was the theme for this week, is the phases of life and their rituals. And we might even notice through that phrasing that some of them don't have easy rituals that come to mind. We obviously have birthdays or anniversaries or weddings, that sort of thing. You know, but is there a ceremony for the birth of a child? You know, we often have a baby shower, right, beforehand. But do we have a ceremony for the birth of the child, or is it really just a parade of people meeting the child over, you know, the first month or two of the child, right? Is there a ritual or ceremony when we transition from infancy to childhood? Not that there's necessarily a clear demarcation, but maybe something like when they start to walk or they say their first words. And maybe the ceremony doesn't have to be a big societal thing. It's just within the family, you know, whatever it is. And, you know, is there something that marks adulthood? And what do we call that? You know, is that 18? Is that 20? Is it 16? Is it, you know, bat mitzvah, or, you know, I don't know exactly, right? And we can look around the world and see that some cultures do and some cultures don't seem to regularly do it. And to miss these transitions is to have the community fail to participate in the life of a member of the community, to fail to fully participate, which means we miss an opportunity to knit into the community, right? And that's why I describe it as a wound, like one of the stitches was missing in the crochet, right? And now that whole, you know, basket is not as strong.
Yeah. Wow.
And it has an opportunity to unravel now, right? So in Chinese, the term for marriage is dongsen.
Wait 1 second, Steve. It blinked right when you said the term for what is what?
For marriage in Chinese is dongsen, and that's comprised of 2 characters. The second is oneself, or body, or life. It's the term that is used when somebody says personally in Chinese, sen. And the first part, zong, is death, or come to an end point, or finish.
Oh, wow.
So the term for marriage is a finish of a life, which obviously you can make a joke about, like, but the idea is like this individuation, this separateness, this whole path of separating and establishing myself as an egocentric authority is coming to an end. And we'd expect in a marriage, it's through choice, right? And it's embraced. So it's not necessarily bad. It's not like a tragic death necessarily. But that idea in Chinese is right there. It's like it's the end of oneself.
Wow.
Right.
Boy, this
and that gives you a sense of where, well, boy, what's the ritual? What's the ceremony for that? Because you could easily say it's the end of oneself and the birth of, the couple. But the end of, I think, helps people register like, oh, this demands a ceremony or a ritual or whatever. Anyway, I thought that was
that's very nice, very interesting. It seems like it would be good for people just to hear, like, for people about to get married to know those words or those characters with the meaning of oneself and the death of the self. You know what I mean? Like, I don't think, when I got married, I really understood that at all, or the idea of, I just didn't understand it, Steve. And if I didn't, I know a lot of people didn't.
Yeah.
I don't know, something that would be helpful. There's a lot of wounds around that. Speaking of, the failure to have a ceremony, that death of self would be the thing that we're maybe, I don't want to say should, but that maybe we're missing. I know I was, wow, that's really good. I think I've already told you in my personal life, I just am not a ritual person. And so it's something that I don't identify with easily, but yeah. So like when you say, well, there are ceremonies for these things, a lot of things at certain points and afterward. Is ceremony always something that is after?
No.
Do you know what I mean? It's like after you're engaged, you have an engagement party.
You can have ceremony before, during, and after, or any combination, right?
I see, because you're meaning ceremony, not necessarily. Yeah, I'm thinking of ceremony. Okay.
Yeah.
I'm thinking of it as a specific thing rather than a celebration or a ritual or a recognition of a change.
Right.
Nice. Well, there must be some very good poetry on some of these topics.
Well, I'll read one that I've been working on. It's not finished. If you like.
Please.
So this is, I don't have a title and it's incomplete, but it's first words to a newborn. Welcome, child. There will be blood. Welcome, child. This world is pain. Welcome, child. All is green. All will brown. Welcome, child. Few will fly. Some will drown. Few will rise while all come down. Welcome, child. People will lie their beliefs to you with an innocence only allowed by, offered to, the unexamined mind. Welcome, child. Oxygen is corrosive, and the balance between not enough, enough, and too much is the impossible sort of magic that the tortoise, slowly dragging its sandy flippers towards the lamplight, is urging itself to believe. The turtle will dryly die, and all your metal will come to rust, and all of your bones will come to dust.
Nice. Wow. Yeah. Well, Steve, this is a pretty heavy turn of events there. First words to a newborn. Pretty heavy.
Yeah. Exactly what they normally learn the hard way.
Yeah, right, right.
right?
And if you only tell them that every day, no, it still wouldn't matter. It's experience that we're seeking. Wow. I like the visual on the turtle. And the grass is green, but or everything is green but will brown. The turtle will die dried up. I'm not sure of the words, but
yeah.
that's why. Yeah. Now, what do you? I know what you're going to say because we can look at it a lot of different ways. But you were talking about, is it like finding my way of reading, of hearing poetry or seeing it or whatever? Now, on these poems, we had talked about publishing them. I would love to read that poem again while I can read it.
What about publishing?
Like,
I feel we're talking about different things.
like on the classroom, can we publish that poem so I can read it again?
Well, yeah,
Or
that's where I'll put it in the classroom like I do every session. Yeah.
you know what would be, I think could be interesting. I don't know how to facilitate it because Zoom is already challenging, but when we have a poem, well, I'm just thinking of myself. I would just like to be reading it as you're reading it
Sure.
visually as you're reading it verbally.
Yeah, I know.
But that's okay.
Yeah. That's how I prefer it myself. Yeah. But I'll post the class and I'll post the poem so you can replay and you can sync it up and listen as you read.
Okay.
I think if I post what I think we'll read during the class, it's not what gets read, and then I have to go back and edit it. So I have to do it twice. So it makes sense just to try and post what we actually read.
Gotcha. That makes sense.
I read this one. I thought this was really, really moving. This is by Ruth Lepson. It's called The Day of Our Divorce Hearing. You treated me to lunch, a spaghetti place. We had never been so kind to each other. When you said I'm still a slob, we laughed. After lunch, we stood in the parking lot. You said, you have the last word, but I said, no, I'm tired of being the one who sums things up. You get the last word. But you couldn't think of one. So off you went to our silver car, I to our red one. It's 3 years later, and even that's just a story now. Lately, I don't feel as if I lived with you, but I remember our kindness that day when it no longer mattered.
Nice.
I just thought that was so excellent.
Yeah, it really is. It really, really is.
So good. I even like the setup of the spaghetti place before the slob, like you can you can see the foreshadowing there.
Yeah.
Got a lot.
I did not, but yes. That's nice.
Here's one I wrote. It's called Zafu. Noticing loneliness is I sit in the sphere of mirrors. Let the incense spark to smoke and reduce to ash. Return to earth, the undying need not notice death or notice birth.
Mm. Would you read it again?
Sure. Zafu. Noticing loneliness is I sit in the sphere of mirrors. Let the incense spark to smoke and reduce to ash. Return to earth. The undying need not notice death or notice birth.
Wow. Wow, that's really good, Steve. The undying. Wow.
Here's another one that's thinks about ash as this kind of idea of bodily death. And this is about a sacred fire ceremony and the place of the fire the next morning. It's called Night's Red Song, Morning's Ash. The fire, this fire, any fire, the fire. Still the only thing I know which lets so easily go bit after bit of itself. And what falls away falls up. The red, up-falling snowflakes free to dance into the rising night. The smoke curls, twists, and snakes toward a promised indistinguishment. The sky. Not the fire, this fire. Not any fire, the fire. Falls into itself, quietly lowering log to coal. Each heated to weaken, to lastly live in the sacred bosom of this fire's heart, of the fire's heart. 10 logs, one for each direction, the cardinal and the betweenings, as well the sky and mother under all. These last two, perched one on the other, the slender skylog atop the two-hand, bend your knees, Pachamama there as ever, supportively and unthankedly beneath. The waters, so well hid within these woods, whistle free now. Listen closely, behind the crackle, harmonizing with the barn owl. And these smokes rise from reds and tonight curl into an unseen embrace with this fog. Smoke lost in fog, fog lost in smoke. Every upon a time has its time, and then its time comes. The end, a theme will be our lost smoke, our cold forgot, our morning ash. Would that we could, would that we would come to the ground with grace.
Well, very nice.
So at the end of the ceremony, one of the officiants said the very last line in that poem. And I felt I had a rush to write it before I forgot the last line, but I knew the line that they had just spoken was going to be the end of my poem. So before I forgot it, I wrote the whole poem like as fast as I could type.
Wow, it's incredible to see.
That one line, come to the ground with grace.
Would that I could, would that I should come to the ground with grace.
Yeah, would that we could.
Would that we could. Okay. Nice.
Would that we could, and would that we WOOD.
Ah, nice. See, there's another reason to read it.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, that's so nice. I love the curling smoke. Okay. Nobody else is on. Read it again. Read it again. If you would, please.
Night's red song, morning's ash. The fire, this fire, any fire, the fire. Still, the only thing I know which lets so easily go bit after bit of itself. And what falls away falls up. The red, up-falling snowflakes free to dance into the rising night. The smoke curls, twists, and snakes toward a promised indistinguishment. The sky. Not the fire, this fire, not any fire, the fire. Falls into itself, quietly lowering log to coal. Each heated to weaken, to lastly live in the sacred bosom of this fire's heart, of the fire's heart. 10 logs, one for each direction, the cardinal and the betweenings, as well the sky and mother under all. These last two perched one on the other, the slender skylog atop the two-hand bend your knees. Pachamama there as ever, supportively and unthankedly beneath. Waters, so well hid within these woods, whistle free now. Listen closely, behind the crackle harmonizing with the barn owl. And these smokes rise from reds and tonight curl into an unseen embrace with this fog. Smoke, lost in fog, fog, lost in smoke. Every once upon a time has its time, and then its time comes. The end, a fiend, will be our lost smoke, our cold forgot, our morning ash. Would that we could, would that we would, come to the ground with grace.
Wow. Really, really nice. Now, did you
Thank
say
you.
you've been working on that for a while or?
No, I wrote it all in like 17 seconds.
Wow. Okay. So I mean, I heard what you said about the inspiration on the last line and you hurried to write it. But it just seems like after you have the last line that could have taken a while. Beautiful imagery with the rising red snowflakes. You know, what falls rises up, something like that. Wow.
Yeah, upfalling.
Very nice.
The word I used.
Unfalling. Wow. Nice. Promised indistinguishment, I wrote down. See, this
Yeah.
is why, yeah, it's like that's wow. That's a nice it's a really nice word pairing.
Yeah, promised indistinguishment. Yeah. Yeah, I feel
Yeah.
like I could definitely rewrite it and improve it, but it is what I wrote, so it's all right.
Nice. Yeah, yeah. Yeah, that's good. Yeah. Very good. Hey
Uh,
Steve, my cell phone is
yeah,
gonna die at some point
okay.
soon. So when
Yeah,
it does, that's what
let's finish up.
happened.
I'm gonna finish up and get home
Yeah,
anyway.
please. Yeah, that's nice.
Yeah, why don't we call it a night there and I'll get to uploading stuff.
Well, thanks for the good lessons and
Yeah,
metaphors. And a big hug to Sarah, okay?
yeah, thank you.
Sure thing. All
I'll,
right, I'll talk to
I'll
you
fuck up.
soon. All
Thanks.
right. Thank you.
Go, data, go.